everybody. And again, thank you very much to Max and Simon for having me here again. It's such a privilege, and thank you for everybody to spend a Sunday with us. So where I'm going to start is really about 20 years ago when I first started in corporate. I was always really interested in the mind and mental health. Growing up as a child, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Sorry. Understanding domestic violence, alcoholism, and mental health. So I grew up in an environment where I was always very intrigued as to what was really going on. So really my path, I think, found me. I didn't go searching for my purpose, it just found me. So 20 years in corporate, and then I decided that I actually wanted to work for myself, and I went down the route of psychology. And then my whole life changed after I went to a seminar where there was a psychotherapist there. And within a 2-hour seminar, he literally pulled apart the psychology world very harshly. So for me, what that meant was understanding what the gut-brain coherence was. And then I also spoke to him after the seminar, and I said to him, I just have more questions. And he said, let me put it really simply. You cannot talk to a starving brain for the rest of your life. You have to understand that a deep root cause, nutrition, is one of the most powerful parts that is missing. If you want to help people fully put the puzzle together for them and their life, you cannot separate the gut from the brain. So that's where my journey started. So for me also too, I've just qualified and certified in nutritional psychiatry. So that was just another passion for me to go deeper, to really help people get back their lives. So first and foremost, I'm not paid by anybody. I have no disclosures. This is an educational, informational. I'm not your doctor or your therapist, but I draw on 20 years of experience with my clients who I am beyond grateful that they trust me to go down the path that I take them down, as sometimes as uncomfortable and challenging as that is. They take the deep dive, and every single one of them push through their boundaries and come out on the other side. So what is integrative psychotherapy? Well, in my terms, it's a deep conscious connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit. You cannot separate any of them. My approach is not a one-size-fits-all, because every single person is unique in their patterning and their programming and how they see the world through their own conscious and unconscious minds. I treat root cause emotional, physical, and behavioural patterns. I also help people rewire their mindset, their nervous systems for long-lasting change. I don't do 12-week boot camps. They don't work. The other part of that is healing beyond the symptoms. Unfortunately, the centralized medical and psychology and big pharma world look at basically the symptoms. So we'll look at a symptom, we'll treat the symptom, then you get more symptoms from what you've been taking, and then you get more drugs to more symptoms. So what we're really effectively doing is we're chasing spot fires, which gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you get sicker and sicker and sicker. Focusing on root cause, but again, not just symptom management. I support resilience, consciousness, and a long-term state of being in my clients, and that's the role that I take them down. Bridging the conscious and the unconscious mind, and also making new connections in your body. Can't feel from here. You have to get into here. My work also includes metabolic health, nutrition, and nervous system education. Personally, myself, I've been a carnivore now for over 6 years, and I had my own diagnoses after being an ex-bodybuilder, which led me down to type 2 diabetes. So you'd kind of think that eating a bodybuilding diet, as atrocious it is now that I look back on it, that led me into insulin resistance because I was eating up to 8 times a day. Crazy when I say that out loud now. But I actually ended up going and getting some blood tests, and the doctor said to me, oh, you're borderline type 2 diabetic. He said, we better keep an eye on that. I said, yeah, no, you don't know me very well. I'm going to get rid of that. So next day I jumped into carnivore and I actually found Dr. Paul Mason. Anyone doesn't know him? Most of you probably do. He's a legend. I was like, right, I'm just going to do this for 90 days. And 6 years later, here I am. Still have all my own teeth and my own hair, and I'm thriving. So what is mental and metabolic health? Now, firstly, when you may hear that, all of a sudden, your mind will go to mental health is in here. Metabolic is here. But we never actually put them together, because most of the time, even 20 years ago when I started asking people what they eat, I got looked at very weirdly, because a lot of people in therapy are never actually asked that question. So that's where that you can't talk to a starving brain came from. Now, sadly, every year, over 46% of the world's population suffers from declining mental health and metabolic health. And this statistic is on the increase. We are getting sicker and sicker mentally and physically, metabolically, spiritually, every single day. And the lack of antidepressants and the medication of prescriptions are not the root cause of the metabolic epidemic that we're facing. Failure to address the root cause of depression is not just the problem, or generalised anxiety disorders, or simply anxiety. The category also goes into type 2 diabetes, autoimmune, and obesity. Again, we're not looking at the root cause. Same thing when we look at soil health. That's the root cause of everything. It's the same with our bodies. We have to look at the root cause. The role of nutrition and anxiety and depression and other mental health issues generally is often ignored or not even questioned. So that's why we're in the problems we're in. No real emphasis on looking deeper, and one really critical root cause of that is malnutrition. Now, it kind of sounds weird when you think it's 2025 and we're talking about malnutrition. If you shop in the middle aisles of a supermarket, you're going to be malnourished. Go to a butcher or find a farmer. Who's heard of a chemical imbalance in the brain? Yeah, everyone. Do you know that was actually a hypothetical? That was actually never rooted in science at all. Dr. Mark Horowitz, who I've put there, he talks about this a lot. He's actually an Australian psychiatrist. He actually lives in the UK. So back in the 1980s, the hypothetical was, and this came from Big Pharma, surprise, surprise, that, we have a serotonin problem. Serotonin is just not the problem. That's one chemical that we have. We have myriad of them. But this was the focus because it was the mood chemical. So what they decided to do was go, we have a problem, so we will use a Trojan horse to say that serotonin is the problem and you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, which, by the way, there is still no test for. So how do we know that? And how do we know how people methylate? Are they under-methylators? Are they over-methylators? What is their gut health like? And where does your serotonin come from? Your gut. Over 97% of it is made in your gut. So this was a hypothetical, again, and I think if we look in history, we've had many Trojan horses that have been led, which then comes a drug on the other side of it. As we said, most conversations around psychology, we separate the head from the body, which we just cannot do. We are a whole being, and this is how we must operate. Again, depression and anxiety are also founded in autoimmune or nutritional deficiencies. And if you go back to the 1900s, Abram Hoffa and Linus Pauling, who originally started what they called psychonutrition and orthomolecular medicine, they were the pioneers, and guess what happened to them? They were quacks. Because the root cause of that, again, was looking at the body's chemical pathways of what we were feeding it. Also, too, if you look back at, old images in the 1900s when people were sick in hospitals, they used to wheel them out into the sun. We know why they don't do that anymore. Now, who are we? We're a species. We're a human species, like any other species on the planet. But we're not actually eating a species-appropriate diet. What we're actually eating is what I call the standard Australian American diet, which stands for sad, anxious and depressed, or self-administered diabetes. We are starving mentally, emotionally, physically dysregulated. We are overfed and undernourished. Moderation, balance and variety were made up by guess who? Big food, because that's what we've been told, right? Now, most people, including myself, prior being carnivore, ate a moderate, balanced diet. And that got me into trouble, and all people that I work with, same thing. It does not exist. However, the challenge with that is we're emotionally attached to our food, because we either eat when we're sad, happy, indifferent, but we've also been trained to do that. That's a part of being emotionally attached. So even though, you may get a diagnosis, say of type 2 diabetes, and the doctor says, or your practitioner says, hey, this is a carbohydrate intolerance and we've got to remove those carbohydrates, every single thing in your being is going to scream no. Why? Because we're not regulating our emotions without the attachment to food. And this amazing picture here, what we've actually really been designed to do, and especially in the middle aisles of the supermarket, it's now what I call clown food. That's pretty much what it is. If you look at a bowl of cereal with 5,000 colours and preservatives in it, and we wonder why we're going off and not feeling well mentally and physically. Your mind and your body, what's your relationship with it? Is it a good one? Is it a healthy one? Or is it a challenging one? Your mental and metabolic health depends on you valuing yourself more than the opinion of others, especially when it comes to changing your way you eat and what you change mentally or metabolically to do to heal yourself. Unfortunately, what we eat, drink, think and feel has a direct impact on your mental and metabolic health. So you have the ability to either create the amazing gut microbiome, which also creates your neurotransmitters, or we can deplete them by every single thing that we choose. So what we have to do is actually eat to fuel our body, not our emotions. We have a relationship problem and a value problem with ourselves. Our emotional regulation, our internal and external environments, our conscious and unconscious mind, and our value systems. So this is what I use in my clinical practice. Now, most people that come to see me generally already know that I'm carnivore and that these are the practices that I use. But even when we talk about them being a diet, in effect, they're really not a diet, they're a metabolic state. Because what they do is they get the body into burning ketones instead of glucose. So this is a lifestyle protocol and it's not a diet. The other thing too, especially more with women than men, we have been learnt to have a diet culture, because diet means that we've got to get into a bikini to go on an event on a boat that we spend 12 weeks to get to, and then what happens? Then you're back to doing the same thing over and over again. So diet has a very powerful unconscious pattern with a lot of women. So that's why when we talk about a protocol to eat, it's about the metabolic state. And the other part of that, it's really interesting, I get challenged a lot on it, is, being in ketosis is stressful to the body, long term. Okay, I've been there 6 years. I know people that have been there 15, 20 years. And also 2 babies are born in a metabolic state. When you breastfeed, babies are in a metabolic state. If that was really stressful, do you think we'd do it? So what I'm actually going to do today also, which I've never done before, I'm actually going to share some of my clients' experiences and the amazing work that they have done, and to where they were and to where they are now. So I'm going to start with my first one, and I should have my glasses. Before beginning this journey, I felt lost, ashamed, disappointed, and trapped in a cycle I couldn't break. But today, I stand here completely transformed, empowered, happy, and liberated. A dark cloud has lifted, and I finally feel control of my life. One of the most greatest accomplishments is being 2 years and 3 months alcohol-free, without a single relapse. What once felt impossible became a reality, and I discovered that healing just wasn't about abstaining from alcohol, it was about rebuilding my mindset, my habits, and my self-worth. A major breakthrough came when I realised how much unconscious behaviour influences on my daily thoughts and actions through this journey. I became deeply self-aware, honouring myself with unconditional love, nourishing my body and my mind, and reaffirming my values in my life and my relationships. I found strength in stillness, connected with my true self, and embraced a lifestyle shift, one that unexpectedly played a pivotal role in my recovery. Switching to a carnivore way of eating didn't just improve my physical health, it cured my cravings and reshaped my relationship with food and addiction. The combination of unconscious coaching and metabolic healing was life-changing. I began this journey feeling unworthy with unwavering support, but with unwavering support, I rebuilt myself from the ground up. Not only did I overcome addictions, but I also became metabolically healthy, found confidence in sharing my story, and developing a deep understanding of nutrition and healing. Now it's my mission in order to help others heal, particularly those struggling with alcoholism and women's health. For anyone struggling, know this: the first step to admitting that there's a problem and that alone puts you ahead of the most. You are powerful beyond measure. Every day I celebrate my progress by continuing to show up for myself. I am grateful for this journey, for the lessons learned, and for the unwavering support I received. My life is proof of the new pathway to be created and completely transformed. Thank you, Natalie. Cheers, Tash. One thing I just want to really share with that, it was, I remember this beautiful client ringing me and we had a chat and I just said, this is what I do. And she's like, okay, great. So she came and seen me and we're there chatting and she walked out going, okay, I'm going to eat steak. Don't know why. That's what she said. And then 4 weeks later, I remember getting a text message from her and she said, by the time she had left work and got home, she said, oh my God, I've just realised I had no desire to go from work to the bottle shop to home. And it wasn't until she'd got past that and then reflected what she hadn't actually done. I see that a lot with my clients. They'll do things particularly in their lives where it'll be quite a continual pattern. Then we go through the work that we do and all of a sudden it'll be 2 or 3 hours or even sometimes days later. They're like, wow, I just noticed that I didn't do that. And it wasn't a fight. It wasn't a struggle. It wasn't a conflict. So the ethos of my business, and I'm going to touch on, 3 real parts, which I could, like Gary said, I could talk about this part of my work for 3 or 4 hours. But really just to give you an idea of the deep root cause of unconscious conscious patterning. So we have our pre-cognitive commitment programming, which is between the age of 0 to 7 and 7 to 14 years of age. So really what this basically means is you are totally unconscious in your environment. You have no control or ability to analytically think about what is happening, what is not happening, whether it's true, real, or indifferent. You just absorb everything. It's incoming data, which you don't have any way to rationalise because you don't have an analytical mind just yet. The other part of that is also we're energy. So we are one big walking battery. Every single thing in your environment energetically affects you, whether you're unconscious or conscious. But we learn from our environment how to think, how to feel, our values and our belief structures, whether or not they serve you or not. The data that you receive is not accurate or even real. Most people run on an autopilot of patterning and programming of behaviours day in, day out for years and years and years. And 95% of what you do is all unconscious. That's why when someone says, I know this is not really good for me, but I keep doing it over and over and over and over, and why can't I stop? Because that's a very small conscious interference. Your unconscious mind says, well, if I've been operating on this for 30 years and I've been giving you the same data and you want new data, well, I need new evidence and new data to do that. We also are a massive sum of our unconscious value structures. So this is where we live most of the time, our external containers. The 4 pillars in all the 20 years that I've been working, these are the main 4 pillars where most people live: mother, father, culture, and religion. This is where we get our programming from. This is where we learn our beliefs and our values from. And that's where family cycles continue. And they will if you remain unconscious, but also too not understanding what your mind's actually doing. Your mind is an amazing tool, but I know sometimes it feels like it might be out to get you. It's really not. It just needs some help so you understand how it operates and how to reframe it. Now, sadly, most people are also programmed to care about what other people think. Who does that? Let me also tell you, no one really cares. Because you're thinking about them thinking about you, and they're thinking about them and they're thinking about you for about 5 seconds. Because I tell you what, you're going to think more about you than anyone else thinks about it externally. And the other pattern is, as I say to people, well, tell me what someone else thinks. Who was it? What was it? Write it out for me. And they're like, who said it? Oh, I just thought it. Let me tell you, it is mostly your unconscious negative self-image speaking to you. In fact, it's actually your voice a lot of the time. So 95% of individuals don't like who they are, and many of us were raised with external validations and outcomes. And a lot of that is being through food, alcohol, as a numbing agent, and also a dopamine hit. And that's why it's so difficult to get off sugar and carbohydrates, because dopamine just goes. And same with your phone. Same pathway. We become very addicted to that dopamine hit. Do you know the relationship values with yourself? Every time I ask a client this, it always goes externally. There is no conscious or unconscious data around relationship values with yourself. And 90% of motivation will fail within 3 to 4 weeks. We've all done diets. Doesn't work. We've all done, I'm going to go to the gym. Then that doesn't work. Or I'm going to go for a run club. Then that doesn't work. Your mind has to see that as a very high internal value. Otherwise, it will not last. If you do not have that embedded, you're going to struggle. But then what happens is when you do that, if you don't have an embedded value, that's where you'll then start beating yourself up, because it's like, oh, I failed again. I'm hopeless. I shouldn't do that. I should have done that. Also, be really mindful of your language patterns. It's another part of the work that I do. Our language patterns are very, very powerful. How many times have we said should have, what if? Yeah, don't should all over yourself. One part of our mind and our bodies, the more you repeat something, the more you get rewarded. So your unconscious mind does not care about the story. It just cares about the consistency that you do something with. And then your body will follow with that. To break the cycle of any behaviour, you do not need to go back to the past. You cannot change the past. Even when we talk about those 4 pillars, it is not anyone's fault. We don't blame mum and dad. But if you want to hold on to a story of blaming mum and dad, you can do that for 20 or 30 years. And your mind will anchor that every time, and so will your body. The only thing that we can ever change is in the present moment. And this is where we lead into unconsciousness, into consciousness. But guess what happens there? It's really uncomfortable because we're so used to living in a state of familiarity which is a comfort. So a lot of the time when we talk about moving from familiarity into unfamiliarity, every single time your mind's going to go blank, your body's going to freak out because you're moving into the unknown. But that's the only way you can make change. So if you walk through the world with the belief that you cannot change and that you're not good enough, you're going to find it every single time. Every time. Because a lot of that is still unconscious. How loyal are you to yourself? A lot of the time we're not. And I'm just going to give you a bit of an analogy and to really make this quite clear about what happens with what we do with our value structures, especially when we go to change the way that we eat. For example, if you had 3 friends, one was blonde, one was black hair, and one had red hair. And a friend of yours rang and said, hey, I'm having a barbecue, do you want to come over? Yeah, sure, no problem. And that was a fine, and you've spoken to your friends and they've said, yes, we'll come. And then the person that invited you rings you back and says, I've changed my mind. Can you leave Blondie at home? What would you do? Now, a lot of the time people will go, oh gosh, how am I going to get out of that? What story am I going to create? Or you just say, no, I'm not coming because that's a very valuable friend of mine and I'm not coming without it because you asked us. That's exactly what we do with our own value structures. We drop them off depending on where we go, who we speak to, and who is around us at the time. So effectively what it means is if you're changing your diet protocol and you're eating a carnivore way and someone says, oh, you're not having the chips and salad, and then you get into a freak out and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll just have it. Immediately what you've done there, you've dropped your values on the floor, along with your brain and your gut. But the thing is because we are so programmed to manage other people's thoughts, reactions, and feelings. Who does that? But guess what? We've been programmed to do that. How about we actually understand, well, hold on, what do I need for myself? And that's also really confronting. Do you have your own back? Do you say yes to you more often than yes to the environment? And do you cheat on yourself? And not necessarily just with food, because I know normally when we're in this context, people think about food. I was recently asked that question. Someone said, oh, you've been carnivore for 6 years. Do you cheat? I said, why would I cheat on myself? Let alone seeing food as something that you have to sneak around and hide. That's a really powerful induction if you do that. I don't cheat on myself with food. I don't cheat on myself with my values because my mental and metabolic health have been set as a high value. It's not negotiable. What goes on your plate is not up for community project. So again, dropping your values depending on where you are and who you're with. It's uncomfortable in the beginning, but once you do it over and over again, what gets repeated gets rewarded, and that becomes a part of your being. So here's another amazing client of mine. Before beginning this journey, I was stuck in a cycle of isolation, struggle with my mental and physical well-being. Looking back now, the progress I have made is nothing short of life-changing. I present a completely different energy, not just to my loved ones, my friends and my colleagues, but most importantly, to myself. I feel like a different person in so many ways. One of the most profound changes has been the relationship with alcohol. I never set out on the goal of quitting, but I became more aware of how excessive drinking affected my mental health, my metabolism, and my overall well-being. Abstaining became an easy and natural choice. What once felt like a coping mechanism, in reality, kept me trapped in isolation and preventing my self-growth. Now I have no desire to go back. The clarity, the balance, and the sense of connection I have gained is far more rewarding. I initially thought that being completely open and honest would be the biggest challenge. However, from my very first sessions with Natalie, I felt at ease. Natalie's honesty, frankness, and non-judgmental approach created a space of safety and trust, allowing me to face things that I no longer ignored. The openness was the key to my progression. Through this process, I have learned to truly understand, respect, and love myself. You'll start to see a theme. I now see undeniable connection between my mind, nutrition, and physical health, and how each factor influences my happiness and the well-being of those around me. My perspective has shifted. I am less judgmental, more present, and far more intentional with my habits. I sleep better, wake up energized, and have built a daily routine that includes exercise and mindful practices. The most impactful part of this journey has been a deep self-reflection. I learned who I was, what I valued, and what I wanted, not just for myself, but for those around me. I now am applying this awareness to my relationships, ensuring I show up to my best self for my wife, my children, and my colleagues. Professionally, my goal is to create an environment of mutual respect, ambition, and shared success. If I could offer any advice to my past self, it would be simply this: be honest, pay attention. The signs were also there. I just needed the courage to acknowledge them. For anyone struggling, as I once did, I want them to know that there is a way out, and it is easier and more rewarding than you might believe. Small steps quickly turn into great leaps, and self-reflection and honesty and a willingness to change. I now celebrate my progress every single day with gratitude. The journey has not just been about transformation, but I have reclaimed my life, my relationships, and my future. So where do we move from our external pillars? Well, I take my clients, and also myself, I operate this exact same way. What are they? It's your nervous system. It's your brain, it's your heart, and it's your gut coherence. These are crucial. I really love that picture. I think we've probably felt like that a lot. Our brain and our gut, again, as I touched on earlier, is crucial. It has over 100 million nerve cells. Pretty important, right? But if you're stuck up here talking about something for 10 or 20 years and you're not getting into here, that's never going to be in alignment. Now, it's often called the second brain, but I actually like to call it the first brain, because the complexity of it and the power of it and what it actually does for us when we actually eat food, and especially when we eat real food, such as a carnivore or a ketogenic protocol, it has all the amino acids that human needs. And I also think, by accident, did a cow actually just get all 9 because it just sounded good? No. That's what we're meant to eat. And I remember as a young kid, my grandparents used to feed me offal. I didn't know any different. Tripe. I don't eat that now because I'm just too lazy to cook it, but liver, that was normal. I do not remember seeing a piece of broccoli. And I also remember my nana, very thin, she'd be out doing the wood chipping, and she'd be eating lard out of a container. And all of a sudden that went sideways because we were going to die from a heart attack from saturated fat. There was another Trojan horse. The other part of that is our heart. It also is inverted by our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. This is the primary nerve and the vagus nerve that carries a signal to our heart, but also to our brain and our gut. The other part of that, your heart, also has its own brain. The other part of that too is we're also disconnected from our hearts, especially when it comes to looking within our own self to our own heart. We can give it out very freely a lot of the time to other people, but how do we do that with ourselves? Now, the hypothalamus. I love the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a key player in the body. It's basically coordinates stress hormones, stress. Also, it allows your metabolism to regulate properly. So circadian rhythms and awake cycles, it all manages that. Now, especially with women, not so men, you're pretty lucky men, because you can actually fast whenever you like, because you don't have the lovely thing called progesterone, or as much estrogen as women have. When you generally go into this lifestyle, there's a lot of talk around fasting. So a lot of the time fasting will be used for weight loss, great, amazing, but when you do it is really, really important, especially when you're a woman and you're on a cycle, and if you're fasting at the wrong time, you are going to, over time, tank your hormones. The hypothalamus, The hypothalamus is one of those that regulate, like we said, our hormones, our stress response. So, for example, if you're waking up in the morning and you're not eating until maybe 11 o'clock, once or twice that may be fine, but over time, your hypothalamus is going to slow down. It's going to just slow everything down. So I always recommend, if you're going to use fasting, make sure we're knowing why we're using it, where we're using it. Menopausal women, you don't have to worry about that either because we're not regulating anymore. But in the morning, you really, once you wake up with the sunrise, if you're really, the window of eating is between 30 minutes to 40 minutes after waking up. Because what you're doing then is telling the hypothalamus that if you're going to go exercise and you're in a fasted state for too long, the hypothalamus goes, oh, I don't have food on board here, so it's going to create a bit of a stress response and it's going to mess with your hormones long term. One part of that is going, well, if I like to go for a run or I want to go to the gym in the morning, the best way to do it is to say have 15 to 20 grams of protein. That could be an egg, boiled egg, 2 eggs, Greek yogurt. It doesn't have to be huge, but it's just a signal to say to your hypothalamus, I've got food on board, I'm okay, and I can regulate everything. Now, most of the time when it comes to stress, it's really important to know our programming because most people operate in a flight or flight response because of their environment. But if you're also not understanding your internal body, you can also put your body into a flight or flight response over a long period of time. So fasting is absolutely an amazing tool, but with women, you've just got to be very, very careful where you're doing that and fasting within your cycle. Oh, there's a little also thing that I've written down the bottom there, the heart's little brain from Thomas Jefferson University. That's an amazing read on the heart's little brain. So your nervous system is the master. So like I said earlier, you don't feel from here, you think from here. And when you think from here, your body's going to respond. Most of the time, you're responding from experiences that have been created from the past over and over and over. So right now, if I get you to think about the fact that your body does not know where it is until you give it a thought. Now, depending on where that thought comes from, your body and your nervous system is going to respond immediately. So if you go back, say, 5 years ago and think about something that made you really, really happy, it could have been a song, you could put a song on, and all of a sudden your body's going to respond. But you're not there 5 years ago, but you have the memory of what that felt like 5 years ago. The same thing in the future. You could predict right now into the future and make up anything in your mind. You could make up anything in your mind and your body's going to respond. Is it real? No. Because if you think about the future, where is it? Out there, right? Most time when people think about the future, what happens in your body? You get anxious. But we're not there. So it's really critical to understand the power between your thoughts and what happens in your nervous system that you condition. So the other part of that, we actually become addicted to specific chemical reactions that we have in our body that become our predictable life. So drama, anxiety, living in other people's containers, not staying in your own, worrying about what people think, managing other people's thoughts, feelings and reactions. So then what happens is you will dumb yourself down and you'll dilute yourself, which then will also create a compression, depression. Is that all making sense? You got to learn how your mind works. Most of the time, as I said before, we are living in the past and your body will follow. So, for example, when I talk to people that have panic attacks, where does the panic attack happen? Not here. Gets triggered here, but it ends up in the body. You cannot think your way out of any nervous system dysregulation. You have to get into your body. Has anyone watched an animal when something's happened to them and they shake? We've got to do the same thing. Literally, we have to get out and move our bodies. I was like to say to my clients, get out, sunrise, get your feet on the ground and shake. The neighbour might look over them and go, what's that crazy person doing? But I tell you what, every single time you do it, because guess what too, you're conscious when you're doing it. You have to take care of your nervous system. So again, as I said earlier, I could talk about nervous system dysregulation for hours, but I'm just giving you the ethos and the topics of overview of what I do with my clients. Your mind is the foundation of everything you do, along with your nervous system. So the whole point is being able to move from being unconsciously in the past or unconsciously or sometimes presently in the future, is to bring your mind back to stillness and be in your body and be as conscious and present as you can be. But your mind needs direction. It needs to be shown what to do. The other part of that too, it's really interesting when people start to shift and change. Every single person around them says, "Oh, you've changed." And you're like, "Yes, thank you, I have." Because remember too, what has been very familiar for other people, when you start changing, that causes a disruption in their familiarity. It makes them feel uncomfortable. So like I said earlier, if you go out and you want to eat a steak with butter slathered on the top of it, that's what you do. So this is another part, really, just in short, around my protocol. So stillness and meditation, same thing with meditation. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I can't do it. I've tried to do it, I just can't." Do you know what happens? Because when we run on the same script over and over, same thoughts, same feelings, same thoughts, same feelings, that becomes your predictability. So the minute that you tell your mind and your body to stop and to sit, it's going to arc up. It's like, "What are you doing? You're off script. We're meant to be in the car getting stressed about having 10 coffees before I get to work, and Jane's going to ask me about my meatballs." We can predict all of this and actually get ourselves into a state of dysregulation every single time. So you have to train your mind and your body to be still. And it's the most empowering space to be. Circadian health, of course. We know the sun's not going to kill us. And that's another protocol that I use with my clients. It is grounding, it is circadian, getting up with the sunrise, getting to bed, but also to following your circadian patterns of eating. So you really get quite in tune when you're really, really, truly hungry and when you're not. Or when you feel like a snack, we also know that that's an emotional event. That's not a real hunger event. So I'm going to share one more client with you. After working with her for 5 weeks, I remember her sending me a WhatsApp message. And she said, "Oh my gosh, Natalie," she said, "I've just realised," she said, "I haven't had one suicidal thought since we started working together." That's huge. And really, like I said earlier when I first started, my purpose found me. And I will do this till the day I die. Because seeing my clients from where they are, and I'm going to try not to cry, to where they go is just, I cannot even really put it into words. But here we go. Since working with Natalie, I have become a calm, empowered person. I no longer react impulsively. I recognise when I'm triggered and I can stop it. The biggest shift I've learnt is to love myself. At the start, even looking in the mirror is a mirror practice that I get my clients to do. And it's not actually about affirmations. It's actually about creating an unconscious conscious conflict. Because when you say something verbally, consciously, like "I am proud of myself" or "I love myself," your unconscious mind is going to react extremely challenged and you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel, don't believe it. That's generally what happens. That's to help my clients understand what's actually happening, as powerful as a word or a statement and the reaction that they get from their unconscious. So again, the unconscious is like, "What? Not sure about that." Because what you normally say to yourself is totally opposite. Now I run to the mirror and I'm really, really proud of who I am. I sit in silence when I'm overwhelmed, and a simple yet powerful tool that has changed my life and even has helped my son make better decisions. One of the most profound lessons was recognising that I cannot change others. We can't change anybody else, as much as we try. And as much as we get reactive, save your energy. Only now I respond. I used to dwell on what my ex-husband did or didn't do. Natalie reminded me that my values are different and we will have value conflicts throughout our lives. Now I read through my values daily and I adjust them accordingly as I grow. Letting go of 20 years of pain has freed me to become the person I was always meant to be. I no longer carry old burdens. I use them to fuel my strength. Some may dislike me, but that's not my concern anymore. I speak my truth. I stand by myself and let others make their own choices. Today I am a new woman. The constant stress that I once ruled my life is gone. My heart is light, my mind is clear, and I no longer need validation from others because I actually receive that from myself. I have rekindled old friendships, built new ones, and my relationship with my children has flourished. I used to feel like I was frayed and broken, drowning in a life that I couldn't escape. Now I feel unstoppable, enthusiastic, and free. The world is my oyster, and I embrace every challenge with fire in my belly. The world needs more people like Natalie. Thank you. Imagine if self-love and emotional resilience were taught in schools. The world would be a far better place. So, to heal our mental health epidemic, we need to heal our bodies. But to heal our bodies, we need to accept that we need to change. And we need to also understand that stepping out of those external containers into your own is about stepping into the unknown and the uncertainty, and that's powerful. That's why also when I work with people, like it's kind of like the hokey pokey. I've got one leg in familiarity and one leg out in unfamiliarity. So we're not making the mind and the body become too triggered or reactive. The other part that's really important is to help you kind of understand when you're conscious and when you're not. When you're highly reactive, you're living in an unconscious program. When you are responsive, you are actually operating from your conscious mind. The other part of that too is reactivity also becomes a nervous system regulator. So the more reactive you are, the more your body responds to that reactivity and that becomes your life. So then what happens is, and you go to the doctor, and I'm going to share a story with you which blew my mind. I was in a room with a paediatrician, a child paediatrician who was allowed to, he wasn't a psychiatrist, but he had the skills to actually, dish out SSRIs. He was talking about an 8-year-old girl that he was working with who had depression and that he had her on SSRIs at 8. And she wasn't the only one. He also has 4-year-olds on mental health care plans. So the other thing is like Max beautifully said in the beginning, there is a place, but there isn't a place without asking the right questions first. What are they eating? How much screen time are they on? What is their emotional regulation? This little girl, what is her hormones? What are they putting on her skin? Is her lymphatic system working? Like dishing out SSRIs to an 8-year-old, then understanding how are they going to come off them? Because once you are on them for a long period of time, your brain grows around that SSRI. So your brain becomes reliant, but also too, as many people that I've spoken to, I hear it over and over again. Doctor gave them to me, didn't ask me about my history, didn't ask me about, oh, you're sad. We're allowed to feel. And I know it sometimes may feel dysregulated, but your body is talking to you. It's leading you to be able to go, okay, there is something deeper here that I'm not looking at. So stepping into change is, again, it's confronting, but you can do it. Thanks.